My name is Emily Carter. I'm in my mid-30s, a wife and a mom. For 10 years, I believed I was happily married to my husband. When people looked at us from the outside, we seemed perfect. Daniel was the kind of man who knew how to charm a room. At family gatherings, he was the guy who cracked jokes, pulled out chairs, and looked like the model husband. Friends often told me I was lucky to have him, and for a long time I believed it. Our anniversary was coming up, 10 years together. Daniel had planned a fancy dinner at one of the nicest restaurants in town. I was excited, not just for the dinner, but for what it symbolized. A decade of marriage isn't something everyone reaches. As I picked out my dress, I thought back to the early days, how I met him at a friend's barbecue, how his smile caught me off guard, how quickly he made me feel safe. Those memories kept me holding on whenever things got rocky. But if I'm honest, the past year hadn't felt right. There were cracks, ones I tried to ignore. Daniel had started working later than usual, brushing me off when I asked questions. He'd snap at me over little things and then quickly smooth it over with an apology, saying he was just stressed. His phone became something he guarded like treasure. He'd tilt the screen away when I walked by, set it face down at dinner, even take it with him into the bathroom. When I mentioned it, he laughed it off, accused me of being paranoid. Then there were the charges on our credit card statement. A high-end boutique I'd never shopped at, a hotel I knew we hadn't stayed in, dinners at places I'd never been. When I asked him, he shrugged and said it was for clients, work-related. He made it sound so reasonable that I let it go, even though deep down my stomach twisted every time. In public, Daniel was still attentive. He held my hand when people were watching, kissed my cheek when family was around, gave speeches about how much he loved me. At home, though, the warmth had thinned. He was there physically, but not really present. I'd find myself watching him across the table, trying to read his face, wondering where his mind was when he stared off into nothing. I told myself every marriage goes through phases. 10 years is a long time, and stress happened. I wanted to believe it was temporary, that he still loved me the way I loved him. But something in me couldn't shake the feeling that I was being left behind while he lived another life I wasn't part of. So as I sat there getting ready for our anniversary dinner, curling my hair and slipping on the necklace he'd given me years ago, I tried to focus on the good. I wanted the night to be special, to remind us both why we had chosen each other in the first place. Still, in the back of my mind, those little red flags waved quietly, warning me that what I thought was perfect might already be broken. At first, it was the little things that made me uneasy. Daniel had a way of pulling away without ever admitting it. He used to come home and talk about his day, sharing stories about coworkers or laughing about something that happened at the office. Lately, though, our evenings had turned quiet. He'd sit across from me at dinner, fork in hand, and answer my questions with 1 or 2 words, as if conversation was an inconvenience. Whenever I asked if something was wrong, he didn't offer reassurance. Instead, he'd sigh, roll his eyes, and tell me I was being too sensitive. The words cut deeper than he knew. It wasn't just dismissal, it was a way of making me doubt myself. I'd walk away from those talks wondering if maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe I was looking for problems where none existed. The distance between us didn't show up overnight, but it built brick by brick. Nights where he used to curl up beside me became nights where he claimed he was too tired, turning his back and falling asleep before I even switched off the lamp. Weekend mornings that once meant pancakes together turned into him glued to his laptop, insisting he had deadlines to meet. He wasn't cruel, not outright, but there was a chill in the air I couldn't ignore. I told myself every relationship changes with time. People grow comfortable, routines take over, the spark fades. That's what I kept repeating to myself when I felt the sting of his indifference. Marriage isn't a fairy tale, I thought. Maybe this was just part of the ride. But there were moments when the truth pressed too hard to ignore. One night while folding laundry, I found a shirt of his that smelled faintly of a perfume I didn't own. It wasn't strong, not enough for me to confront him, but it was enough to lodge in my mind like a thorn. When I asked him about it, he smirked, patted my shoulder, and said I was imagining things. Then came that phrase again, sharp and dismissive, too sensitive. It was the same whenever I questioned his absences. If he came home late or brushed off dinner plans, I'd ask for an explanation, only to be met with irritation. He would raise his voice just enough to make me back down, then accuse me of picking fights. By the time it was over, I felt like I was the one in the wrong, apologizing for even bringing it up. The worst part was how convincing he could be. He'd wrap his arm around me afterward, offer a shallow kiss, and promise he was just tired or stressed. And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the man I married was still there, still loyal, still mine. During this time, my best friend Maggie noticed the strain. She'd known me since childhood, the kind of friend who could read my moods even when I tried to hide them. Over coffee one afternoon, she leaned across the table and asked if everything was okay at home. I laughed it off, forced a smile, and told her Daniel was just busy. She didn't look convinced. She pressed gently, saying she'd seen men act this way before, and it rarely ended well. But I wasn't ready to let anyone see the cracks in my marriage. I defended him, told her he was a good man, just under a lot of pressure at work. Maggie gave me a look that mixed concern with sadness, like she wanted to shake me, but knew it wouldn't help. When I went home that evening, her words echoed in my head, but so did his. Too sensitive. That phrase replayed over and over until I couldn't tell which voice to believe, hers urging caution, or his convincing me I was the problem. The confusion was suffocating. My instincts whispered that something was wrong, but my heart clung to the hope that I was simply imagining shadows where there was light. As our anniversary drew closer, Daniel's behavior took an unexpected turn. After months of coolness, he suddenly became attentive again, almost too attentive. He started bringing me coffee in the mornings, complimenting my hair, even holding my hand while we walked through the grocery store. At first, I wanted to believe it was a sign things were improving. Maybe he had realized how distant he had been. Maybe he wanted to make up for it. He spoke about planning something special for our 10th year together. He wouldn't give details, just dropped hints about a surprise dinner, a night I would never forget. His sudden enthusiasm should have made me happy, but instead, it unsettled me. It didn't feel real. It felt staged, like a performance rehearsed too many times. One evening, while hanging up his jacket after he'd rushed upstairs for a shower, my hand brushed against something heavy in the pocket. Curious, I reached inside and pulled out a small velvet box. For a moment, my heart leapt. A gift, maybe jewelry for me, something thoughtful for our anniversary. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside lay a necklace, glimmering under the light. It was beautiful, delicate, with a pendant encrusted with stones. But it wasn't me. The design was flashy loud, far from the simple styles I preferred. Even the length looked wrong. I knew without question this wasn't chosen with me in mind. My stomach tightened, a cold wave running through me. The first thought that hit me was that he had bought it for someone else. It was too expensive to be random, too personal to be for work. I stood there frozen, staring at the necklace, my chest heavy with dread. For a split second, I imagined confronting him right there. Marching into the bathroom, throwing the box on the counter, demanding answers. But something inside me held back. If he had lied so easily before, what would stop him from lying again? If I accused him without proof, he would twist it, make me feel guilty for even asking. So I slipped the box back into the pocket exactly as I found it. I forced myself to breathe slowly, as though steady breaths could keep the panic from spilling over. The rest of the evening, I couldn't look at him the same way. Every smile he gave me, every affectionate touch, felt like a mask covering something rotten beneath. My mind kept circling back to that necklace. Who was it for? How long had it been going on? I tried to convince myself I was wrong. Maybe he had bad taste and thought I would like it. Maybe he planned to surprise me, and I was overanalyzing. But the deeper truth gnawed at me. I knew my husband. He paid attention to details, he knew my style, and he would never buy me something so unlike me unless it wasn't meant for me at all. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, my eyes open in the dark, I listened to the rhythm of his breathing. To him, it was just another night. To me, it was the moment everything began to unravel. I decided then not to ask questions, not to push. Instead, I would watch. I would pay attention to every word, every excuse, every movement. If he thought he could fool me forever, he was wrong. The hurt was sharp, but beneath it, something else began to stir, a determination to know the truth, no matter how much it destroyed me. The morning of our anniversary arrived, and instead of excitement, I felt a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. The necklace weighed heavily on my mind, and the sudden sweetness from Daniel only deepened my doubts. I knew I couldn't keep guessing anymore. I needed clarity, something undeniable. That's when I called Tom Reynolds. Tom wasn't just any investigator. He was an old friend of my late father, someone I'd known since childhood. He had a reputation for being discreet, and I trusted him completely. My voice shook as I explained the situation, but Tom didn't hesitate. "Leave it to me, Emily. I'll find out the truth." While Daniel was busy at work, Tom followed him. Hours passed like days, each one stretching as I sat at home, waiting. I tried to distract myself, folding laundry, tidying up, but my mind wouldn't settle. Every sound from my phone made my pulse race. When it finally buzzed, I nearly dropped it. Tom's message was short at first. "He's not where he said he would be." Then another came. "You need to see this for yourself." My palms went damp as the pictures began to load. The first image nearly knocked the air from my lungs. Daniel stood outside a hotel, arm around a woman much younger than me. She was pretty in a polished, confident way, the kind of woman who carried herself like she knew the effect she had on people. Her name, Tom later told me, was Vanessa Miller, one of Daniel's colleagues. Photo after photo confirmed what I already feared. Daniel wasn't at the office or meeting clients. He was at that hotel with her. The final picture broke me. The two of them kissing in broad daylight. No hesitation, no guilt. A kiss that once belonged to me, now given so easily to someone else. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. My chest ached as if something inside had cracked wide open. Anger burned through me, but it was tangled with humiliation, sadness, and disbelief. 10 years together, and this was how he honored our anniversary? Not with love, not with honesty, but with betrayal in its rawest form. For a long while, I just sat there, phone clutched in my hand, body trembling. Part of me wanted to scream, to drive to that hotel, to drag him out by his collar and demand an explanation. But another part of me, the part that had endured his dismissive words and manipulations, stayed very still. If I confronted him now, he would twist it again, make me feel like the fool. So I made a choice. I wouldn't go to him with anger. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me broken. If he thought he could play me, he was wrong. Wiping my tears, I steadied myself and called Tom back. "Thank you," I whispered, voice hoarse. "I know what I need to do." The pictures were no longer just proof of his betrayal. They were tools, weapons in my hand. I would not explode in rage. I would be deliberate, careful. He had taken something from me, but by the time I was finished, he would lose far more. That night, when Daniel walked through the door with flowers in his hands and a smile on his face, pretending to be the perfect husband, I forced myself to smile back. I kissed his cheek, accepted the bouquet, and acted as though nothing had changed. Inside, though, my resolve was solid. He thought he had fooled me. What he didn't know was that I already had the truth, and I intended to use it in a way he'd never see coming. I took my time getting ready for the dinner Daniel had arranged. I chose a dress he had always admired, one that fit me elegantly but didn't scream for attention. Every detail mattered. My hair pinned just so, makeup flawless, a calm smile practiced in the mirror. On the surface, I looked like a woman eager to celebrate 10 years of marriage. Inside, though, I was steel. When Daniel saw me, his eyes lit up in that familiar way, but now I recognized it for what it was: performance. He kissed my cheek, complimented how stunning I looked, and guided me out the door with a hand resting lightly at my back. To anyone else, we would have seemed like the picture of romance. To me, every gesture felt hollow. At the restaurant, he put on a show. He pulled out my chair, ordered my favorite wine, and laughed loudly at his own jokes. The waiter brought appetizers, and Daniel leaned across the table, telling me how grateful he was for all these years together. He even reached for my hand, holding it as though nothing in the world could shake his devotion. The hypocrisy was suffocating, but I didn't flinch. I nodded, smiled when appropriate, played the part of a woman blissfully unaware. When the main course arrived, Daniel grew more animated. He raised his glass and toasted to 10 wonderful years, and many more ahead. The words were smooth, the delivery convincing, but his eyes betrayed nothing real. I wondered if he had rehearsed those lines on his way over, or if lies came that easily to him. Then came the moment I had been dreading. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small bouquet, wrapped neatly in white paper. Roses, bright red, perfectly arranged, but far too simple for such a milestone. He handed them across the table with a grin. I took them in my hands, careful to keep my expression even. Flowers, yes, but no box, no necklace. My heart didn't sink this time. It hardened. I already knew the truth of where that necklace was headed. He could hand me roses, sing his empty praises, but the gift that mattered had already been reserved for someone else. I set the bouquet gently on the table beside me, thanked him with a softness that felt almost foreign in my mouth, and lifted my glass again. To him, it must have seemed like gratitude. In reality, it was confirmation that he had no idea I was 3 steps ahead. The evening carried on with dessert and small talk. I watched him closely, memorizing every smirk, every false display of tenderness. I let him believe the illusion was working. As we stood to leave, he wrapped his arm around my shoulders and whispered, "This is just the beginning of the night." His tone was playful, suggestive, but all I heard was the emptiness behind it. On the drive home, I stared out the window, letting the silence stretch between us. He probably thought I was overwhelmed with emotion, touched by his efforts. The irony nearly made me laugh. When we pulled into the driveway, I turned to him with a smile I didn't feel. "I have a special surprise for you later," I said softly. His eyes lit up with anticipation, and he grinned like a man who believed he was in control. He didn't know that by the end of the night, the mask he wore so easily would be ripped away, and the world he had built on lies would come crashing down around him. When we returned from dinner, Daniel thought the evening was winding down. He had no idea what I'd planned. I told him I wanted to host a small get-together at the house to mark our milestone. He raised an eyebrow, surprised, but went along with it. I could see the pride in his posture, as though he believed I was arranging one more tribute to him. By the time we walked through the front door, the living room was prepared. Chairs had been set out, wine glasses on the table, and a handful of people were already there. My mother, my brother, and my closest friend Maggie were seated, chatting quietly. A few more relatives arrived shortly after. Daniel looked pleased, shaking hands, hugging, smiling as if he were the star of the show. Then the final guest walked in, and the color drained from his face. Vanessa stepped into the room, heels clicking against the hardwood, eyes wide when she saw the gathering. I had sent her an invitation under the pretense of a surprise in Daniel's honor. She hesitated at the threshold, but with so many eyes on her, she couldn't turn back. I welcomed everyone warmly, thanking them for joining us on such an important day. Daniel stood beside me, stiff now, darting nervous glances between me and Vanessa. He tried to mask his unease with a tight smile, but the tension in his jaw gave him away. When the room settled, I walked to the television. A remote waited on the mantel. My hands didn't shake. I had rehearsed this moment too many times in my head. With a click, the screen lit up. The first image appeared, Daniel outside the hotel, arm linked with Vanessa. The room went utterly silent. The next slide showed them entering the building, his hand on her back in a gesture far too intimate to mistake. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And then the image no one could deny, Daniel and Vanessa locked in a kiss, clear as day, taken in full view. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Maggie's eyes filled with anger on my behalf. Daniel's brother muttered something under his breath. Daniel staggered a step forward, face flushed, stammering. This isn't what it looks like. It's out of context. His voice cracked, the confident tone gone. Vanessa's reaction was different. Her cheeks blazed red, and she clutched her purse like a lifeline. The whispers from around the room grew louder, pressing in on her. Without a word, she spun on her heel and rushed out the door, slamming it behind her. Daniel reached for me, desperate now, but I raised my hand to stop him. My voice was calm, steady, every word cutting through the heavy silence. This is the man I married, and this is what he gave me on our 10th anniversary. No one spoke. The weight of the truth filled the room, undeniable and crushing. Daniel looked around, searching for sympathy, but found none. His mask had finally cracked, and everyone could see him for what he truly was. Daniel's face twisted as he scrambled for footing. He pointed at the frozen image on the television, his words tumbling out in a frantic rush. It's not what you think. I'd had too much to drink that day. I wasn't myself. You're blowing this way out of proportion. The excuses landed flat. My brother leaned forward in his chair, arms crossed, staring him down with quiet disgust. My mother shook her head, disappointment etched in every line of her face. Maggie didn't even try to hide her fury. Her glare could have cut glass. The warmth Daniel once commanded in this family evaporated in an instant, replaced by a wall of cold judgment. He tried again, his voice rising, desperate. Emily, you're making me look like a monster. Why would you do this here, in front of everyone? We could have talked about this privately. His hands shook as he gestured around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to back him up. No one spoke. Their silence said everything. The front door still echoed from the slam Vanessa had left behind, her reputation shattered in one humiliating exit. I could imagine the whispers already spreading through our circle, her name tied to betrayal, her image scorched by the evidence on that screen. She had chosen to walk into my home, and she had chosen to walk out ruined. Daniel reached toward me, lowering his tone to a pleading murmur. Please, Em, let's step into the kitchen, just you and me. We can sort this out, fix it before it gets worse. His eyes darted nervously to the faces around us, panic bleeding through his performance. I held my ground, spine straight, hands steady at my sides. No, I said firmly. We don't need a private conversation. Everything that needed to be seen is already on display. His mouth opened, but I didn't let him speak. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice carrying through the heavy silence. By morning, you'll have nothing left here. The weight of those words hung in the air. My relatives shifted, some nodding in approval, others simply stunned by the finality of it. Daniel's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from him as he realized there was no more room for his lies. He stood there, exposed, stripped of control. For the first time in years, the power wasn't in his hands, it was in mine. When the last guest left that night, the house was quiet, but I wasn't. I had spent weeks bracing for this moment, every detail carefully mapped out. While Daniel scrambled to patch lies together, I had already secured my future. My attorney had been briefed, paperwork filed, accounts examined line by line. What he thought was ours had, in truth, been shifted into my control long before tonight. I waited until morning to show him just how deep the trap went. He came downstairs, looking worn, the confidence he once wore gone from his face. He tried again with soft words, telling me we could work through this. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I placed a stack of documents on the table between us. These, I said evenly, are the accounts you thought were shared. They're frozen. Every cent has been secured under my name. His brow furrowed, confusion flickering before it hardened into disbelief. That's impossible, he muttered, rifling through the pages. But it was all there in black and white, Transfers recorded, authorizations stamped, his access revoked. And the house? I continued, my tone steady. My father left it to me. It's never been yours. You've only been living here because I allowed it. For a moment he didn't speak. His lips parted as though words might come, but none did. His eyes darted from the papers to me, realization crashing in waves. The man who once carried himself as untouchable now looked like a child who had wandered too far into the dark. He finally sputtered. You can't do this, Emily. We built this life together. I put in the work, the hours. You deserve exactly what you've earned. I cut in, sharp but calm. Nothing. It wasn't rage driving me, not anymore. This was strategy, deliberate and precise. He had gambled on deceit, and now he was bankrupt in every way that mattered. I pulled a small suitcase from the corner, already packed with his essentials. It sat by the door, waiting like a silent judgment. Take that and go, I told him. You'll find you don't have access to a single card. Not the accounts, not the house, not even the car in the driveway. It's all mine. His hands trembled as he picked up the handle. He glanced around the room, eyes landing on the photos on the wall. Our wedding day, vacations, family gathering. All of it now a museum of lies he could no longer claim. This isn't fair, he whispered, but even he didn't sound convinced. I stepped closer, my voice steady. Fair left the moment you chose her over me. This is justice. He dragged the suitcase out the door, shoulders hunched, every step heavier than the... Watching him leave, I didn't feel triumph or glee. What I felt was clarity. The man who betrayed me had been stripped bare, not by accident, but by my hand with purpose. By the time the sun rose higher in the sky, he was gone, and the life he thought he controlled was no longer his. When the door shut behind Daniel, the silence of the house wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. I had held myself together through the spectacle, through the documents and the suitcase, through every word I'd spoken with calculated control. But now, with no one left to see me, the dam finally broke. I sank onto the couch, face buried in my hands, and sobbed until my chest ached. Every memory of us, our wedding vows, the laughter we once shared, the nights I thought were safe, rushed back all at once. It felt like watching a film reel burn, frame by frame, years of my life turning to ash in my mind. The weight of wasted time pressed so hard it stole the breath from me. That's how Maggie found me when she came by later. She didn't knock, just let herself in with the spare key she'd had for years. She dropped her bag by the door and rushed to my side without a word. She didn't scold me for not listening sooner, didn't tell me what I should have seen. She just sat down and pulled me into her arms, letting me cry against her shoulder the way I had when we were teenagers. You're stronger than this, she whispered when I finally quieted. You think you've lost everything, but you haven't. You've lost him. And after what he's done, that's not a loss, it's a release. Her words sank in slowly. I wasn't ready to believe them fully, but they planted something small, something steady in the storm. I wasn't proud of my tears, but she didn't treat me like I was weak. She reminded me that strength doesn't mean never breaking. It means standing back up after you do. As the night stretched on, we sat together, cups of tea growing cold on the table. I admitted what I had been too afraid to say aloud, that I had ignored the signs, that I had let his dismissals convince me my instincts were wrong. I confessed how many times I had doubted myself, how often I had chosen to trust him instead of trusting me. Saying it out loud stung, but it also loosened something that had been choking me for months. I wanted so badly to believe him, I said quietly. I let him make me feel small. I let him convince me that my questions were flaws. And I kept telling myself I was imagining things. Maggie squeezed my hand. That's what people like him count on. But you didn't stay quiet forever. You saw him for who he really was. You didn't just survive it. You exposed him. You took back your voice. Her words settled into me, and I realized she was right. The heartbreak was real, yes. The betrayal, the humiliation, the mourning of a future I thought I had. But alongside that pain, there was relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't questioning my own worth through his eyes. I wasn't silenced. By the time Maggie left to sleep in the guest room, the house didn't feel as suffocating. My cheeks were still damp, my body still sore from crying, but beneath it all I felt a strange lightness. I had broken, but I hadn't stayed broken. I had confronted the lie head-on, and in doing so, I had reclaimed something Daniel could never take again, my self-respect. I closed my eyes, not with peace, but with certainty. The worst was behind me, and I had survived it. The weeks that followed were a blur of court dates, signatures, and long talks with lawyers, but the outcome was clear from the start. The papers came back stamped and final. Our marriage dissolved. I was awarded custody of our 8-year-old son, Ethan, the only good thing to come out of those 10 years. His future was mine to protect, and I promised myself he would never again have to live under the shadow of his father's deceit. Daniel fought at first, throwing out arguments about his role as provider, about how he had given so much. But documents don't lie, and neither do photographs. The judge saw through his posturing, and every attempt to paint himself as the victim only worked against him. By the time the gavel came down, his defeat was absolute. Word spread quickly in our community. Neighbors who once greeted him warmly now turned their faces away. At work, his superiors learned the truth about his affair with a subordinate. The whispers became louder than his excuses, and soon the promotion he had been chasing slipped from his grasp. The man who once strutted with confidence could no longer escape the stain of his own actions. While his world collapsed, mine began to rebuild. Ethan and I settled into a rhythm that felt new but comforting. We cooked simple dinners together, laughed at bedtime stories, and filled the house with small rituals that belonged only to us. The atmosphere was lighter without Daniel's presence, like opening a window after years of stale air. For myself, I began rediscovering pieces I had neglected. I took long walks in the mornings, signed up for a painting class I had always been too busy to try, and let myself imagine a life defined by my choices alone. It wasn't easy. There were nights I still cried, mornings when the emptiness of the other side of the bed stung. But those feelings didn't control me anymore. They passed, and in their place came strength. I realized the betrayal had cut deep not only because he cheated, but because I had allowed his lies to silence me for so long. Taking him down wasn't just about punishing him, it was about reclaiming my voice. I had looked betrayal in the face and refused to let it define me. To the outside world, it might have looked like I lost a marriage, but in truth, what I lost was a man who never valued me, and what I gained was freedom. As I sit here now, telling this story, I know it isn't only mine. Too many people live under the weight of someone else's deceit, convincing themselves to ignore what their heart already knows. I share it because there's power in truth, even when it hurts. Cheating husband exposed on anniversary. By morning he lost everything, and I finally gained myself back. Do you think I made the right choice walking away, or should I have given him another chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.